Monday night in Tryon, North Carolina, and today we went to the funeral of C.W. Farrer's wife, Ruth Farrer, a very godly, wonderful woman, just turned 93 on the date of her death, and was a pastor's wife through and through, served the Lord after his death just as fervently as she had during his life, and a pastor couldn't ask for a better wife than she was. Gracious woman and wonderful, wonderful person. She will be deeply missed, but it just wonderful testimony to what wives of pastors can be, and I'm thankful for mine and for the support she gives me. Just going to continue today on spiritual warfare. We're still waiting for rain, by the way. We're supposed to get some tonight and tomorrow and maybe even Wednesday and Thursday, but desperately need the rain, so pray that it comes through as they keep forecasting that it's going to. We're 10 weeks without rain, a full foot below our normal rainfall during those 10 weeks, so we certainly need it. We've been looking at spiritual warfare and noticing that while Satan can tempt and while people around us can aggravate us and tempt us to sin, it is still self that makes the decision, and we've been looking at the truths of that and the fact that there's the lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. And in each case, we have to make decisions, and we decided that one of the ways that we can resist temptation is to walk with the Lord. If you're walking with Him, it's much more difficult to sin. And so we're going to be looking at several other principles on how to have victory in spiritual warfare, but right now we're focusing in on those elements: Satan's temptation, men's aggravation, and our own free choice. And so we're in Genesis. We said there were over 20 people who went through spiritual warfare, and we certainly see a perfect example of that in the person of Joseph. Joseph, well, tricked by his brothers and sold into slavery, has worked his way into a very influential position for Potiphar, a very successful Egyptian. And he found favor, according to the scriptures, in chapter 39, verse 4, with Potiphar. And Potiphar had put him in charge of everything. That was quite unusual because he was an Israeli and Potiphar was an Egyptian. Nevertheless, he had become in great favor with Potiphar. Chapter 39, verse 6, we also are given this information that Joseph was a handsome man in both form and face. And we find in chapter 39, verse 7, that Potiphar's wife didn't have control of herself, and she looked on Joseph with desire. And she would actually be so brazen as to say, "Come and lie with me." And Joseph resisted, but she persisted, according to chapter 39, verse 10. Now, I want you to stop for just a minute and recognize that Potiphar, being a very prosperous and successful Egyptian, probably had a very beautiful wife. That was one of the things that Egyptians, when they got to places of prestige and power, wanted those trophy wives. So, although it doesn't say here in specifics, we should assume, I think, that Potiphar's wife was very attractive and probably pretty of form and face also. And not only was this temptation put before Joseph, but it was a persistent temptation. She pursued him with much zeal. One day, when there were no witnesses inside Potiphar's house, Potiphar's wife grabbed Joseph and asked him again to lay with her. Now remember, there are no witnesses. Potiphar's wife has made the strong advance. It's been a persistent advance over a period of time. And she likely was very attractive to look at. But it says that Joseph fled. Now he left behind a garment, and unfortunately Potiphar's wife lied and said that he had taken advantage of her, and Joseph was jailed for his fleeing the temptation that had been thrown at him. But the key verse that I want you to see is chapter 39, verse 9. When Potiphar's wife was still making advances, and before this incident of him leaving a garment behind, we find in Genesis 39:9 Joseph's reply to Potiphar's wife: "There is no one greater in this house than I, and he, your master, has held nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great evil and sin against God?" Notice he didn't say, how could I do this great sin and problem against Potiphar? But he said, how can I do this great sin against God? You see, while I'm sure Joseph had great loyalty towards Potiphar, and while I'm sure he recognized there were some risks in giving in to Potiphar's wife, it was neither the fear of being caught, nor was it the fear of his relationship with Potiphar, but it was his relationship with God that restrained him. In the New Testament, it tells us with every temptation, God will make a way of escape. Potiphar saw that way of escape, to flee out of the house. And while short term, it cost Joseph considerably by going from a man of prestige and honor and position to jail. Nevertheless, as you finish the story, if you read on, you'll find that God restored Joseph fully. Nevertheless, I want you to see that in this spiritual battle, this spiritual warfare, Joseph won. Why? Because of his respect and fear of the Lord. Next time you're tempted, don't let it be because you're afraid of being caught. Don't let it be because of other relationships that you have. But always let the resistance that you bring against temptation be because of your fear and your love and your respect for God. And the only way that happens is when you walk with him. That's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.